And you've talked some about the new ways of thinking that you see your students or the teachers in your department engaging with the material. Do you have any instances of, has the wiki in the Gen Ed Lit department, for example, allowed instructors to develop kinds of course materials that they might not have otherwise if there weren't this kind of wiki space? Or have your students reacted to poems or novels in ways that they just clearly couldn't have without this, without the wiki mediating for them?
Good question.
Well, I'm not sure how much instructors are using it because I don't keep track of like access numbers, but I do know that a lot of instructors have started thinking about participating in a community of instructors rather than participating as just someone getting through this one component of their graduate program. And so I've spoken with a number of teachers who have asked me what the benefit for them in putting things on the wiki would be. And so it's interesting for me to try and formulate a response to that is respectful, but tries to get something, tries to communicate the value of what they're doing for the wider Gen Ed Lit community. And I think there are, as it gets bigger, I mean, it's kind of in its infancy right now, and so as it gets bigger, it will become more useful and more heavily relied upon. And we're in the process of transferring a lot of the hard copy material that Brooks has held on to for so long to the wiki and making all that available.
So would that include assignments?
Assignments, and we have the standard list of texts that are automatically approved, and then also you have to petition to get other texts, and so all those petitions are going up on the wiki as well, the summaries and why people want to teach different books. And so then hopefully as people come into the department, they teach a certain number of texts, and then afterward the range of texts opens up and they can begin to see what sorts of options are available, and then but also not feel completely swamped, because any option they choose that's on the wiki will eventually have strategies and how to approach it and how other people have done with it. So.
As a teacher in that department, it's helpful because even with one course project or assignment, in addition to having the assignment, which I've gotten in the past, I also have 3 or 4 different teachers' reactions to the assignment and what works, how they revise this assignment to make things work differently.
It sounds like
that's
Epicurious for teachers.
Yeah.
It is.
I think one thing, just to answer the question from the point of view of poetics, is poetry, as I began to teach it, was always extremely text-bound. You were constantly dealing with the text and annotation of the text and scanning of the text and so on. And this just opens up music, readings of the poems, staging of the poems, visual analogs for the poems, just an enormous range of materials that takes poetry really out of the ivory tower back into the culture. And that I'm enjoying that hugely.
And I love the students' wit. Like
Yeah.
one of the groups that was building their section on Kipling's animal stories. When you open it up, they're very quietly jungle noises. A chirp and a growl, and it's just so much fun. It's so witty. And it really shapes your reaction to the whole website. And a number of the students, the Dracula group decided to drench everything in blood. All red. And then another group that was working on Dorian Gray went and did research on mauve and all of these colors that the decadents delighted in because they were so unnatural. And they found ways to weave this color scheme in. Things that
It's
just wouldn't,
fascinating.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like what you're suggesting, Dee, in a different way, just wouldn't have come up.
Yeah,
The textures that wouldn't have come up.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank you. It's a brief conversation, but we don't want to monopolize your time or the viewers' time. So I think we'd like to end with just one final question of if I were a professor at one of your colleagues and I was curious about this wiki thing, what advice would you give to me in terms of how do I get started? What do I do with it when I have it? Where do I go for resources? That would be great.
Well, my advice would be to go over to the IT department.
That's exactly what I was
Get yourself a CETA helper who can sit with you as you begin to put the wiki together. It becomes second nature after a while. You just very easily move in and out and check pages, but it's not second nature at first to most print-bound people. So I would say there are resources in the university. You don't have to do it by yourself. It's much more fun to do it with someone else. Go talk to someone like Teresa or Jacob and see what they're doing, and then just jump in there.
And we should say that for people at other universities, CETA, which I can never remember what it stands for.
Right.
Do we know what it stands for?
Student Instructional Technology Assistant, I think.
Sounds good.
So it's this wonderful program that we have here that they're undergrads and graduate students who actually work for our Instructional Technologies Department, and you can apply as a faculty member to work with a CETA with one of these, and they're paid. I mean, it's an actual job. And so the other real pleasure that's quite different for the way literary scholarship and often teaching is doing the same way you're talking about is that it's a great collaboration. So some of the fun parts of my semester now are when I meet with the several people who receive my CETA, wonderful CETA, Nathan Comer, thank you, and several others. And we just brainstorm and invent so that I describe to them functionalities and aesthetic issues that I find interesting, and then they have so much fun playing to make that happen in ways that they just normally wouldn't be called upon to do, even with wikis, because other people wouldn't be that interested in those larger issues. And so the collaboration of the wiki at the level of design is just as much of a pleasure, I think, as it is. And I just learned so much about other ways of framing knowledge as it is for the students.
I would say, for me, I wish I'd known about those people.
I can't believe you did this on your own.
But the central thing for me, as far as the construction of a wiki is concerned, is to very carefully consider the structure that you want it to have, because I sort of think about my wiki as a skeleton, and if I don't have all the pieces put together just right, when you start adding parts to it, the more parts you add, the less functional it becomes if the underlying structure isn't robust. And so I can't tell you the number of times I had to rewrite entire swaths of the original pages of it just because the underlying structure wasn't strong enough to support all of the things that I was going to be asking it to do as I began to realize what it needed to do. So.
Well, great. Dee, Jacob, Teresa, thank you so much for your time and your advice.
Well, thank you. This was fun.